What's up, Faber fam? So coming back to you from the garage. It's been a long time, so we got kind of an update video going on right now. But wanted to show you around and show you what our projects are. See. So first off was the dirt bikes. So we got a little PW50 that I got from a guy at work, along with the Junior 80 for both kids. We went through both bikes. Neither one of them were in running condition when we got them. The 50 we did an entire top end on, the jug, the piston, the cylinder head. Went through basically the entire bike, put new reed valves in it, new spark plug, brand new carburetor, all new cables, choke cable, throttle cable, brake cables, brake levers, you name it. We went through the whole thing. The only thing we haven't done yet is put new plastics on it, so it's still to come. The Junior 80, we fired it up after the we did a carb rebuild on it. Clutch cable and just loosening things up was about it on this one. So we were able to get them both fired up, get both kids riding on the dirt bikes, which was really good. And then I picked up a 2009 CRF 70F. That was a really cool bike, a really good buy. Both kids have had a blast on that, clutchless, 3-speed. So it's a lot of fun for both kids. So there's the dirt bikes we're dealing with on the channel now. And of course, you got my 2016 Street Glide Special. I don't think this thing will be going anywhere anytime soon. Got a lot invested and it's one heck of a bike. So like I said, there's a few new things in the garage. One of the new things that we got was a Harbor Freight bike lift. Not the best lifts out there, but definitely the cheapest. I actually picked it up used on Facebook Marketplace. It was in pretty good shape, not used very much. And you know, for $200 for a bike lift, how much better can you get, you know, for 200 bucks? So bike lift is definitely nice when you're working on stuff like this. Also upgraded and put some heat in the garage. Got, you know, not much, but a nice 5,000 watt heater there, like electric 220. Changed the toolbox setup just a little bit. Brought one of my toolboxes home from work. My dad's 1988, I believe, 50th anniversary Mac box that he bought new in '88. He kind of passed down to me, so pretty cool heirloom box, if you will, there. So moving on, current projects in the garage are a 1986. It is a XLCH Sportster 1100 Ironhead that I'm doing for a buddy of mine. It is a pretty basket case of a bike when he bought it. Basically going through the entire bike. We put some new Z-bars on it. We're putting a gas tank on it. Gotta still go through and clean the gas tank. I rebuilt a Super B S&S carburetor for it. Gone through, put new intake seals in it. A new spacer plate for the carb. Sandblasted the entire carb body to clean it up. Basically right now we're gonna try to get the rest of the carburetor back together and go ahead and get this bike fired up again for the second time. We've also put the exhaust on it, so when we got it, it didn't have exhaust at all. So the exhaust, just so we can run it off and everything. Both rear frame rail sections were cut off on this thing. So right after the spring perch here, somebody hacked it off and this was all missing. So he actually had a donor frame, and I was able to cut both pieces off of the donor frame. And what I did there was I machined a slug to go inside of that frame about an inch on each side, inside of the inner diameter of that frame. Put it on, welded it up, finished ground it on the inside and everything. Painted them up nice. Made it stronger than factory, actually, because I believe that's kind of a weak point where they bent the tube together there. So also put some new progressive suspension lowering springs on there. Still got to modify the rear fender and get that going. Controls, it has it had makeshift controls on it, but we're putting newer forward controls on. Still got to lengthen the cables, put twist throttle back on it, front brake assembly, rear brake assembly. Got a gamut of things that we're going through on it. So today we're going to work on the 86 Sportster. What we got going on is I bought a S&S carb insulator block. It's basically the carb spacer between the intake manifold there. The factory one was a smaller inner diameter. Of course, the S&S Super B has a bigger throat diameter on it. Also, which I don't think you can see right now, but what I did with the factory manifold was I ported it to the same size as the S&S Super B carb. That way the manifold port diameter matches the carb diameter. And then this will be my new spacer plate to get the carb out away from the manifold a little bit and also isolate that vibration some. So first thing we need to do to take this out is there are two 5/16 18 socket head cap screws on this side, on the intake manifold down on each side here. And then on the back side there are two nuts holding in the slotted portions. So first we'll take the bolts out of this side. Gotta kind of use the ball end of a nice Allen wrench down in there to loosen it up on an awkward angle. And then drop it real good right between the two cylinders. So 5/16 18 socket head cap screw. Get the other one out of this side. I'm just going to loosen this one. I don't want to take it all the way out. That way I can go around the other side, loosen up them nuts, and I don't have to worry about that whole assembly falling out while I'm on the wrong side of the bike. So walk around the other side. These use a 1/2" wrench. No need to take the nuts all the way off because they're slotted, so we'll just loosen them up enough to let the plates slip out from underneath the washers there. And then finish removing this socket head screw. There's the last screw. And if you just come straight this way with it, some slots on the back slide out of the nuts. So like I said, I'd already put new intake seals, the rubber seals on here, basically test fitted up already off camera. And now we're going to pull it back apart, split the intake from the carburetor, and put in our new spacer plate that I got from Harley. So let's go over to the bench and we'll take care of that. Alright guys, so we made it to the bench. What we're going to do now is take off the two 3/8 bolts holding the intake to the carburetor. So something you'll have to do also if you do what I did here and ported the factory intake for the bigger diameter Super B carb, the bolt holes on the factory intake, they're smaller than the 3/8 16 bolts that the Super B or Super E uses. So I had to also open up those holes in this intake manifold to allow the bigger bolt diameters to fall through. So like I said, I previously opened this up, got a port matched to the size of the Super B. So our only objective here is to take this new intake manifold and get it opened up here. Use the old Spyderco So basically what we want to do here is make sure the new port matches the Super B and the bolt pattern there, which it does. We got the right part from Harley. Look at that. This is an S&S aftermarket part. Harley actually doesn't even sell the OEM carb spacer for the factory manifold and factory carb setup. This is the OEM. It's basically like a multi-lam piece with the smaller diameter, some through inserts there, that way you can't crush the entire piece. They hold that distance, that spread there, so it doesn't become loose, but it's pretty ragged out, pretty deteriorated. So, and the port size doesn't match. We would have to drill out these bushings. It's not a good idea to do. The bushings would have just spun. So basically scrap that part. But Harley, like I said, Harley does not even sell this factory piece anymore. The aftermarket is the only options that we have now. So, which is fine, being that this is an S&S carburetor. I can go with this S&S spacer plate. Makes sense, O-ring side to non-O-ring side for a seal, and then this comes with the O-ring side to go to the non-O-ring of the actual manifold there. So that'll be our total stack up, will look like that. So what I'm gonna do, just for sealing purposes here, I'm gonna grab a little bit of vacuum grease or any kind of grease you got. We'll work on that just to kind of lubricate that O-ring up a little bit, keep it lubricated from drying out and help it seal a little bit. Just a little dab will do you here. You don't want to let it get sucked into the intake or anything there. So you don't want to get too much on this waffle material here either. It will soak that up and that's not good for it. So we got some light oil on both O-rings there. Set it on here, move it around just a little bit, let it get sealed up. Same thing here. So I have lock washers to put on here as well to help with the vibrations and the bolts backing out. It's just a split lock style lock washer. Be careful with these on aluminum. They will gouge the material if you're going in and out with these a lot. But if you're not, it's a good alternative to putting Loctite on aluminum parts that are a good chance, you know, sooner or later you're gonna have to take them back apart. So it'll look a little something like that, and we can get our Allen wrench here, run these down, try to make them tighten pretty even at the same time. You don't want to smash that seal too much. Remember, you're going into aluminum, so it's easy to strip out. If you do, you can always helicoil, but sometimes the walls get a little thin on these carburetors. Put helicoils or king certs in it. So you can see we're nice and tight, getting seated up. Put a couple ugga-duggas on these. Tight, but not too tight. Too tight's broke. Ugga-dugga. That's what a guy at work always said. Tight is tight and too tight's broke. Alright, so it looks pretty good there. The lock washers sit nice down in the counter boards and the intake. That's a nice assembled part. So I'm going to do the same thing with these intake seals. Put a little bit of oil on them, make sure they seal on the cylinder heads real nice, and then we'll get this thing installed back on the bike. So back to the bike. Alright guys, we're back to the bike. So the next thing we really want to do is get in here where the intake manifolds match the ports in the head. And we just want to clean that surface up. That way our new seals make a nice seal onto the cylinder heads and we don't have any leaks. While you're down this far, take every precaution you can to make the job go as smooth as possible. That way you don't have to pull everything back off if you got an intake leak here. So I'll throw you back on a tripod and then we'll get started on this. Alright guys, so you're back on the tripod. We're gonna go in here. I got a little piece of 800 grit sandpaper. Just kind of polish up on these port faces here. That way we know our seals make a good seal. No air leaks, no vacuum leaks. Make the bike run as good as it possibly can with the setup it has. So you want to pull these washers that are on these nuts, pull the washers up so the manifold tabs slip underneath of the washer. or that will space your manifold up as you're tightening it down, and it won't seal properly either. So you want to double check, make sure them washers are up. Even back these nuts off where they're about halfway threaded on. That way you have more space in there to line it up and get it in underneath. So I'll grab the manifold and then we'll get it all back on. Alright, so off camera there I went ahead and just put a light film of oil on both rubber intake seals. Make sure you don't have any little hickeys or anything on your intake that can possibly mess you up or space it out. So everything feels pretty good there. We'll go ahead and roll it back over. Try to line these clamps up here. We'll slide that guy in, paying attention on the back side, making sure they go underneath the washers there. We can grab our 5/16 bolts up front and try to get one in here on the left side. Gonna push it till it finds a hole. Grab our ball end Bondus Allen wrench. Get a couple threads started in the guy. You do not want to tighten these down yet. You just want to get them started because you want to tighten both backside nuts and front side bolts evenly. That way you get a good even smash on that intake seal. So I'll get this side and we'll go to the other side. It's a little bit easier to see from the other side how much smash you have on that seal. We'll get this one started, threaded in. Leave it about right there. Go to the other side and get some on the nuts. These sides, I got about an 1/8 inch gap on this side. So I'll come back to this side and get them a little closer. Got about 3/16 on this side gap. So I'll draw it into where it's about an 1/8 on each side. And right there, it's almost at an 1/8 and it's starting to get a little bit of resistance. See how the carb's kind of holding itself? From that one side. So what it does is these clamp rings are tapered on the inside, and there's a cone on that seal. So as that taper pulls down on that cone, it pushes it in and onto the head. So it seals it on the ID of that seal to the intake, and then it seals it on the back face to that head surface. So as you're tightening down, you'll feel the carb draw itself up. I'm gonna have to look in the Harley book to see what the torque spec is here, but trying to get a torque wrench down on these awkward angles is never really a achievable thing. So getting pretty close. Want to make sure our throttle actuates fine. So I need to bring that down just a hair. There we go. The throttle pivot here comes fairly close to top surface of the head. So you want to make sure you're not binding or making your throttle stick there. That would be a pretty bad thing. I got those kind of snugged up. Go to the other side, snug the nuts with a wrench. Snug them up good. Get these bolts good and tight in here. You only want about half an ugga-dugga on these ones. They're kind of a bear to get to. Especially the rear one here. And then that dude is good and tight. Not moving around, not going anywhere. Intake, carb setup is on. So that'll probably be it for this video. I'll go ahead and get it all edited. Still working with Premiere Pro for my editing software, trying to get that to where it's more common for me to use. Next episode, we'll go ahead and we'll hook up a makeshift fuel tank into the fuel line here, get the battery in, and fill up this fuel bowl and give her a crank. Try to tune in the idle and the fuel mixture screw on this thing a little bit. Get it running and breathing some fire again, just to know that the carb setup is all good. So thanks for watching. Stay tuned and see you in the next one.